Hey everybody, it's Kyle Jetzel, your Driven Autism Dad. Today I want to share with you a secret that has allowed me not to struggle even as I have faced some very, very difficult moments in my life. And it's the secret is something I call EME. Uh, and I'm going to share that with you after I share a story about me growing up and how I've always been amazed how two people who can experience the same event in their lives and take an entirely different meaning away from those events. For instance, when I was a kid, I remember playing high school basketball and I was probably 13 years old. I guess I was a freshman, so whatever age that is. And I remember time changed in Texas, which meant it got dark kind of early. And I remember I grew up in kind of a rougher neighborhood, and the idea of walking home in the dark from school to home was frightening. I'll just put it that way. And I remember after practice one day, after basketball practice, uh, I walked out of the school and I realized I had about a mile, maybe not quite a mile from school to my home. And so I remember walking out and taking off running. And I ran all the way home as fast as I possibly could to avoid any problems, right? Kept my head down, ran as fast as I could. When I got home and I walked in the house, I was breathing really deeply. And my dad said, "What's going on?" I said, "Well, I just ran home from school." And he said, "Why did you run?" I said, "Because I don't know if you noticed, Dad, we don't live in the best neighborhood. And I'm trying not to get beat up." And he said, "What are you talking about?" And I said, "It's kind of tough out there. And don't want to experience any problems." And so I ran home and he said, "Well, you're afraid of what?" I said, "I'm afraid of getting beat up." And he said, "Well, you know what, Kyle, you've been beat up before and you're just fine. Don't be afraid." And I said, "Wait a minute, Dad. What if they kill me?" And my dad, in this moment, I'll never forget what he told me. He said, "You know what, Kyle, you're a good boy. You're living a good life. If they kill you, you're in a better place." And he started laughing and he walked away. Now, this is a grown man telling this to a 13-year-old. And I'm sure those of you that grew up in a rougher neighborhood have probably heard stuff like this. This is probably not new. To some of you that didn't experience these kind of things, this is shocking. But what I will tell you is this. When he said that to me, I thought about it and I realized he was right. And I shouldn't be afraid. And I talked to him a little bit more afterwards, and he said to me, "You know what, Kyle? You're fine. Victims in our neighborhood. Victims are people that look scared." He said, "Don't look scared. Walk home. I'm not saying look for trouble, but I'm saying walk home tall and proud, and be proud of who you are, and don't look for trouble, but certainly don't look scared." And understanding that freed me from a lot of fear in my life, and it actually uh, I know that it actually that event and what he said to me allowed me to step into some very difficult situations as I was growing up and take some chances, not risky life chances, but chances that I probably wouldn't have taken had he not said that to me and had I not decided he was right. I needed to be strong and powerful and tall and be unafraid because he was right. I had been beat up before and I was fine. And if I did die, I would be in a better place. And I really accepted that for what it was. And it freed me up as a young man. And as I grew in confidence, it freed me up even more as an adult. Well, the interesting thing is that at that time, my little brother happened to be in the same situation, not the exact same situation, but he had experienced the same kind of things I had. He had experienced getting bullied and getting roughed up occasionally, and he was fine. And he heard this whole conversation, and it had the completely opposite effect on him. I saw him go into a shell, start to be more fearful of his surroundings. He started to pretend he was tough when he didn't. He was doing all these things. This is amateur psychology, but obviously it led him down a path of it didn't propel him forward and create fuel for him to be a stronger individual. It kind of um, made him go into a shell, and really, I think it limited what he thought he could do and it still does to this day. To this day. So it's always been fascinating to me. How can two people experience the same event in their lives and have a completely different outcome? Me, I was propelled forward. I was free from fear. It made me feel confident and strong. My little brother, same family, same upbringing, same neighborhood, same situation. He took it completely differently, and the meaning he gave it uh, caused him a future of, I would say, limitations. And so I got to thinking about this, and I really started to realize that everything we do, every event in our lives, and that's the first part of EME, stands for event, meaning, and emotion. Every event in our lives, we give those events meaning. Okay. In the case of running home from school, the event was we lived in a tough neighborhood. I was running home from school because I was afraid. That was the event. After talking to my dad, the meaning that his words gave to me were be strong, be powerful, face challenges, don't worry, don't be a victim, right? That was the meaning that I took from it. My little brother Keith took the opposite meaning from that. And the emotions that were elicited, those emotions that came from me from that event and the meaning I gave it were emotions of powerfulness, of courage, of strength, of faith. The emotions that my little brother got from it were completely opposite. They were fear, discouragement, fright. I think it put him in a shell. I think he looked to avoid those situations that I would walk into at this point. And so the idea behind this event meaning emotions is we choose what the meaning is of the events in our lives. And whatever the meaning is we give to those things, the emotion comes automatically. So let me give you an example here. So let's say the event in your life is something difficult. Let's say you got beat up as a kid, or let's say you didn't make you wanted to be an athlete and you didn't make a baseball team. That is the event. Now, the meaning you can give it is, you know what? I'm going to keep trying. I'm going to get better. I'm going to work hard. I'm going to, I'm going to be a better athlete. I'm going to work hard. Even if I don't make the team, it doesn't mean I'm not a good baseball player. It just means at that moment, I didn't excel. And that can propel you. Now, the other meaning you can give it is, I'm just not good enough. I'm not qualified. I'll never be good enough. That meaning elicits emotions of pain and struggle and suffering. Okay. Hope I'm being clear here because it's pretty powerful stuff. Now, the really cool part about this is there were events in my life that I have given meaning and I had written a story about these events that had held me back. And I'll share one with you that's so silly, but I never even knew this until I was a grown adult. So I remember at one point in my life, early in my career, I'm trying to think if this is even applicable, but I guess it is. It's a silly example, but it's pretty powerful. So early in my career, I was doing some sales work, and it was my birthday, and the boss of the company took everybody out to lunch for my birthday and bought everybody lunch. And he said, "Hey, it's Kyle's birthday. Let's go around the table and everybody say something nice about Kyle." Well, these guys were competitive. They were salespeople. So the first guy said, "Well, Kyle has a nice head of hair." Okay. And everybody laughed and they thought it was real funny. And I didn't like that. That's the best thing you can find to say about me. Well, the next guy was competitive too, and he just jumped on board. Yeah, that's Kyle has a nice head of hair. Well, they went around the table and it was 4 or 5 guys, and it really ticked me off that was the best thing they could come up with about me, and I was annoyed by that. Right. So the event was say something nice about Kyle. What was said was the event. He has a nice head of hair, and the meaning I got from it was these are a bunch of punks, and it made me ticked off. Well, I didn't really think about this, but years and years and years later, and it kind of made me sour on people saying stuff about my hair. And I've got great hair. I mean, it's it's so silly now when I look back. But I remember years, 20 years later, probably, I came into work one day and I had gotten a haircut the previous day. And one of the guys in the office said, "Hey, Kyle, that's a great looking haircut." And I said, "Well, man, what's the deal with my hair? Leave me alone about my hair." And he said, "What is wrong with you? I just gave you a compliment about your hair and you're getting all bent out of shape about it." And in that moment, I realized, you know what? That event 20 years ago, the story that I'd written for that event was that these guys were idiots and they were punks and they couldn't find anything good to say about me. And the emotion that it elicited was anger and frustration. And so anytime moving forward, anytime anybody said something about my hair, I got frustrated and I got angry. And it made me realize I could change the meaning of that event. And so this is really where it gets cool with this, okay? What we can do very simply is we can say, what was the event in our lives? In this case, the guy saying I had a good hair. What meaning was it? It made me ticked off. Or what meaning did I give it? Is they were lazy, they were punks. And the emotion was that I was ticked off. And for years after that, I held on to this, I'll call it trauma, even though that's not what it was. It was just silliness, right? But it was still bothering me. So I guess you could call that trauma if down the road later and later and later. So I thought, you know what? What other things in my life have I written a story about? What other events have I written a story about that makes me discouraged or frustrated or angry or depressed? And so I went back and started identifying events in my life and what meaning I had given them. And when I gave them a meaning that led me down depression or frustration or anger, I said, you know what? I'm going to write a new story. And I did with my hair in that moment. I said, you know what? Those guys were just punks, but I do have a great head of hair. It's not something there's nothing I've done to deserve this hair. It just is, right? It's not I didn't do anything to get this hair. It's just a blessing. It's just a gift. And so I need to be grateful for that free gift. And so I changed the meaning to I'm going to be grateful for that free gift. And that emotion, anytime somebody after that said, I'd be getting my hair cut and they'd cut my hair and they'd say, your hair is so thick. You got great hair. And I'd say, thank you very much. And it changed my view of the world. Now, I did this with a lot of things in my life. Okay. And as I faced a lot of tragedies and faced a lot of difficulties, I said, you know what? I get to choose the meaning of this event in my life. I can choose to let it beat me down and tear me up, or I can write a story that says it's going to uplift me. It's going to propel me forward. If I face a challenge, I'm going to overcome it. I'm going to face it. I'm going to work through it. And I'm going to find the blessings in those trials, in those challenges in my life. Now, when my wife passed away a little bit over 2 years ago, this is one that's hard to find meaning in, right? She passes away. That's the event. The meaning I can give it is life isn't fair. I've done everything I was supposed to. Why did this happen? Why me? I'll never find love again. This is horrible. It's discouraging. It's frustrating. And that is a meaning I can give to this, right? Or I can say, you know what? I'm going to learn from this. I'm going to learn how to bounce back. I'm going to face this tragedy with strength and courage and faith. And I'm going to let this event in my life, however tragic or difficult or uh, traumatic it is, how can I turn this and create an advantage for me? And maybe it's just to share my story with you. And if that's enough to help you, that it can become a blessing in my life. I'm going to rewrite that story. And as I rewrite that story, the emotions that are elicited from that are hopefulness and love. And I can focus on the joy and the kindness that she brought into our lives. And I can feel that love instead of feeling that pain and suffering and tragedy and trauma. Okay. So I want to go back to the beginning here. EME is a secret. And it's when we work with our kids, we can, when you face meltdowns on a day-to-day basis, you can say, this is horrible. You can write a story about this, or you can say, how am I going to overcome this? How am I going to face these meltdowns with strength and courage? And I'm going to write a new story. And what I'm going to learn is that I can grow from this experience and I can help my son or my daughter manage these better. And it can be a learning experience and they can grow and I can grow from the same event. So the event is not what creates you. The meaning you give that event is what creates you. And if you give it the right meaning, that can elicit a good emotion or a bad emotion. It's up to you to apply the meaning. So hopefully that's understandable. No matter what happens in your life, go back. Some of the events in your life that are hard, that have traumatized you, go back and say, what was the event? What was the meaning that I gave it? And what was the story I wrapped around that? And go back and change your story, change the meaning. And if you change the meaning, you can change the emotions that come out of those stories. You see me do it all the time in my writings. On Facebook, I have a page called Parenting at Home Autism Challenges in a Spirit of Love. I know that's long. But what it allows me to do is look at these events and say, hey, I get to apply meaning to this event. What meaning am I going to apply? I'm going to apply a meaning that discourages me, tears me down, beats me up, and I can't be at my best for my son. Or I can apply a meaning that's going to uplift me and give me fuel and give me faith and give me strength. And that story that I write creates a world of happiness and joy or a world of discouragement and fear and anger and bitterness. I get to choose the meaning. So my challenge to you is choose your meaning wisely. Okay. Events are going to happen. Tragedies are going to happen. Choose the meaning. Write the story of what you're going to do with those events in your life. And the E will create an emotion. What's the event? What's the meaning? What's the emotion that's elicited from that event? If the emotion is bad or discouragement or frustration, change the meaning. You get to decide. Hopefully that's helpful. Have a great day. And hey, you can get a copy of my book in the comments. I talk about a lot of strategies, how to work with your kids, how to face them in a spirit of love. I'll put a comment I'll put a link in the comments for you to grab a copy of the book along with the course. Do that right away, and I'll talk to you next time. Bye-bye.